you gonna play now?
Bobby, I don't know. But whatsoever I play, it's got to be funky. 1, 2, 3. Funky, funky.
Funky cold.
Funky stuff.
Funky. Funky.
Wicked funky. Can't get enough. I tried. Oh, that funky stuff. I say, whoa, 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 yeah.
Funky Politics Education Reform Series is presented by the National Civil Rights Museum, sponsored by Memphis Education Fund and Southwest Tennessee Community College. We'd like to thank our media partner, Chalkbeat Tennessee.
This is Terry Freeman,
Jim Strickland,
Dorsey Hobson.
I'm DeAndre Brown.
Melissa Househalter,
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics Show.
Funky Politics,
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Y'all better keep listening.
Funky Politics, part of the Katsukia Network.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Katsukia Network. This evening, we're visiting with Dr. James Johnson, the Director of Urban Investment Strategies Center, the Frank Hawkins Keenan Institute of Private Enterprise with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. That's a lot, wasn't it, Doctor?
That's a whole lot of academia.
That's a lot.
But is he funky?
We'll see, won't we?
Oh, yeah, we're going to see. That's important.
Sitting in with us this evening, we've got Cardell Oren, the guest host. He's a Memphis City Director for Stand for Children. Dr. Johnson, Cardell, Doc Ward, DC, sitting here on the radio. What's going on, guys? Everybody all right?
Yeah, everybody's wonderful. I just want to make sure that we got some funky folks here.
I know
I don't
you
smell,
here,
I
so
don't
I know
smell,
it's going
I
to
don't
help.
smell anything. Oh, yeah, I keep it funky.
Whatever. Dr. Johnson,
I keep it
welcome
funky.
to our fine city of abode,
Yes,
and this conversation that we've been having on Funky Politics with education reform and how do we move the needle hopefully in the right direction, not on the east side, which would be the empty side. Let's go toward the full side. And there's some things that you all are doing. And tell us a little bit, number one, about you and the program that you have helped start in Durham that seems to be earth-shattering because it's moving the needle even in Durham, North Carolina.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here
Sure.
with you today. So I am I'm on the faculty in the Keenan Flagler Business School at UNC Chapel Hill, and as you indicated, I direct the Urban Investment Strategy Center in the university. And for the back since 1995, we started initially with an after-school weekend and summer program for kids who are growing up in the 6 most economically distressed neighborhoods in Durham, North Carolina, 6 miles away from Chapel Hill, where the university is located. And what's probably interesting about what we do it from the base of a business school, not a school of education, not the College of Arts and Sciences. We are rooted in the business school, and we got started because we had a philanthropist who thought inner city kids needed something other than basketball players and drug dealers as role models to effectuate educational outcomes for those kids. And so he gave me $3.6 million and said, go do it. He was a county commissioner in Durham, and he said, we want to make sure, I want to see some kids come to Chapel Hill and some other places. So we started with an after-school weekend and summer program that provided college access to about 240 kids. We recruited them in grade 6. We recruited them in cohorts of 30, the kids and their families. We worked with them after school, weekend, and during the summers. We bused them from Durham to the Keenan Flagler Business School every afternoon for their after-school experience, exposing them to, all of the accoutrements of a global education and the like, connecting them with people who could make differences in their lives and the like. And during the summer, every kid got a summer camp experience someplace in the United States to broaden their horizons and the like. We worked with their parents and parenting and all those kinds of things. We had a crisis intervention team to work with any kind of challenges that the kids faced. We recruited 6 cohorts of 30 kids, and every kid we followed from grade 6 through high school graduation in that program. And then the kids who graduated and got into college, we paid their way through college. In that program, it was a huge initiative, initial investment of $3.6 million, total investment about $10 million over the life course of the program. The last group of kids graduated from college in 2011 in that program.
Wow.
And so, in fact, it's one of the kids from the first cohort of 6th graders is getting his MBA with us this year. In June, he will get his MBA with us. A kid who, by the way, when he first entered our program, had been held back in the public school system. They said he had attention deficit disorder. The kid was bored. Right. Stiff, and we provided the opportunity for him to blossom and the like, and now he's going to get his MBA from us and got big things. Already got a job at Bank of America.
Wow.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kentucky Network. We're visiting this evening with Dr. James Johnson, director at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
So,
and my goodness.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Doctor.
So are these kids, are when they're going to school, are they actually going to a public school, or are they going to a school that's actually been chartered by your organization?
No, so that was the initial program. Durham Scholars was the precursor to Global Scholars Academy. Okay. And so,
which was it was a charter-based program.
Global Scholars Academy is a charter school, but all of these kids in our Durham Scholars program, we were merely an after-school weekend and summer program. They went to like 14 different public schools, but we mobilized them in their after-school hours. We had our own bus service and everything to pick them up from their schools, to bring them to Chapel Hill, and they had their academic and cultural enrichment activities on the campus. Then we took them home in the evening.
I got a quick question, if you don't mind, Doc. Yeah, then does that work? Does it work to do a program like that? And then we talk about the outcomes, moving the needle in terms of education reform. And you've got all these philanthropists out there. You've got all of these folks that want to put money into schools, and we want to break up. And I have no problems with charters, but I do have an issue with school vouchers. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I've got an issue with that. But now, if I got 2 or 3 guys in Memphis or in Jackson, Mississippi, or in Chicago, Illinois, or in St. Louis, Missouri, and they can get a Dr. James Johnson who could get this team on the same playing field, then doesn't that move the needle somewhat? And I imagine we're doing something like that, maybe Boys and Girls Club and things like that. Yeah, but what you're saying to me is that you've taken 240 young men, and I get all boys?
No,
boys and girls?
Yes.
Well, I guess the question was, how many of the kids that were going to public school before you started the Global Scholars Academy, how were they doing in school once they started working with you? Did they start to improve at that point?
Oh, yeah. They start, but when they entered our program, all of our kids were reading below grade level, and had all kinds of challenges in their lives. And so what we did was add structure during the extended day hours. And so what I would say is, and what we learned from the program is that after school, weekend, and summer programs are necessary but not sufficient to fully improve the academic performance of kids. To use a boxing analogy, you have to narrow the ring, minimize the time that kids are spending in other kinds of environments where they may be getting conflicting signals. I think after school and weekend summer programs like pushing a rock up a hill, because you have them for 3.5, maybe 4 hours in the evening. Well, where are they the other 19 to 20 hours a day? And in some of those settings, they are getting conflicting signals. I'll give you a classic case. I had a little girl in our program, came, most dutiful kid, do her homework, everything done. And at the end of the grading period, she's flunking everything. I said, how can this be? We got these tutors working with you and the like. So I go to the school. I said, I can't believe this. And I said, I want to talk to the principal and your counselor and the like, so I'm going to be there. So I go there, and we inadvertently stop by her locker on the way to the principal's office. And she opens her locker, and all of her homework assignments are nice and neatly stacked in her locker. She never turned in a single one of them, because in the environment that she grows up in, being smart is acting white, and it's not the right thing to do. See, no matter how hard you preach to a kid during the extended day hours, if they got to get on a bus where, you are bullied and the like for those kinds of things, you have a real challenge there. So what we decided and recognized is, to use the boxing analogy again, how do I narrow the ring? We said, well, we need to build our own school where we are ensuring that kids get a consistent message for as long as humanly possible during a 24-hour period. And thus we shifted from Durham Scholars to Global Scholars Academy. We built the school in collaboration with Union Baptist Church.
But now, how does that actually engage the community then? Because it seems like what you're doing, in essence, by narrowing the ring, to use your boxing analogy, at the end of each round, you need to at least be able to go to your corner and get healed, so that you can get back in the fight.
Yeah.
But if the ring is so narrow to where you can't get back to your corner, how are you able to get the nourishment? Because it takes a little bit of everything from everywhere to build the child.
Yeah. Union Baptist is a pretty big ring. It's got 7,000 members.
Oh, wow.
3 services every day. And when we decided to build the school, I talked to the minister, who's a very forward-looking guy. He said, okay, we're going to do it. And we're going to build it brick by brick. And the next Sunday, he went back and did a sermon about this brick by brick thing. We raised $300,000 in the first 2 or 3 weeks on the brick by brick campaign, and then the church ultimately decided we're going to build the school. They invested $10 million in building the facility. It's a 49,000 square foot building with an upper school, a lower school, a 12,000 square foot gymnasium with a walking track, a fitness center, a music and dance studio, a media center, 2 age-appropriate playgrounds, a 5-star early childhood learning center, and an urban garden.
So you still continue to do some of the the things you learned at Durham Scholars.
That's exactly right.
At the Global Scholars.
But it's extended day.
And then what did you add on to it from your educational standpoint?
First of all, we say deficit models are out, successful pathways are in. We think there are too many people who look at our kids and say, everything is wrong with you and I'm going to fix it. Rather, what we do is say, if you look at kids who grow up in impoverished environments, not every kid ends up a failure. Yeah. Some kids succeed against the odds. And when you ask the question, well, what distinguishes success from failure, 2 important things come out of that research. One, the kids that succeed against the odds are typically embedded in a mediating institution in their community that encourages them to pursue mainstream avenues of social and economic mobility and discourages them from engaging in dysfunctional behaviors. Whenever you hear an interview with Denzel Washington, what does he always give credit to for his success? Boys and Girls Club. Right. And LeBron James, the same thing. He has a relationship with State Farm now. I believe they're investing in Boys and Girls Club like 22 cities because he said that was the only place that was a safe haven when his mom was working and all of that. And so we have, in essence, built our own mediating institution because public schools are closed more than they're open.
That's true.
And so why don't we make them true mediating institutions? We're an extended day, year-round school, and we never close during intersessions because kids have no place to go. Yeah. So we're constantly engaged. To use your coming back to the corner,
right.
you gotta
stay in the ring.
You gotta stay in the ring. You gotta stay in the ring. But the other finding that from the research, the second most critical finding is the kids that succeed out of these environments usually have a big an adult in their lives that connect them with institutions and role models outside of their neighborhood environment. What the Harvard political scientist Bob Putnam calls bridging social capital. Most kids have what we know as bonding social capital. They hang out with people who are just like them. Right. No new learning goes on there. It's when you have a diverse portfolio of ties and connections that you get new information, different connections, and the like. This is about your networks. The more diverse your networks are, the more geographically expansive they are, the better off you're going to be. A sociologist by the name of Mark Granovetter wrote a book back in the 70s that said, it's not your strong ties that matter, but rather it's the strength of your weak ties. And it's about, we talk a lot about mentoring in our communities, and mentoring is really important. Yeah. But sponsorship is even more important.
So what do you do to address that.
Yeah. So how do we build bridging social capital for kids? Well, I teach in a business school, and every year we bring in about 360 MBAs. And every year, about half of them agree to tutor and mentor in our school. And from kindergarten to grade 8, every year, our kids get 2 mentors from the Keenan-Flagler Business School. When they graduate from Keenan-Flagler, where do they go to work? J.P. Morgan Chase, Boston Consulting Group, the Bangkok Bank, the Chinese Stock Exchange. 9 times 2 in my math is 18 people from the world of business in your network that you now have to draw upon. Amazing. And so this is about the strength of weak ties. Our kids don't hang out with those people every day, but rather we train them and we teach them that it's on you to maintain the connections and the like on a fairly routine basis. Well, you know, I got an A on this paper. I got this award. Keep people involved, and it just may be that we're sitting around a table. A new company starts an internship program, and they're looking to diversify their portfolio. Oh, now who?
That's right. Yep.
Those are the connections.
But speaking of a strong tie, you know, in the Boys and Girls Club, and it's great to hear Denzel say that. It's great to hear LeBron's and a lot of other athletes say the same thing. But whatever happened to the black church being that mediating force right there in our community? And I don't want to put it all on them, but have we grown a little bit away from our link, our umbilical cord to the church?
I think yes, in some respects. But what I would say about the church is that if you look at the number of ministries that they have to do these days, they're stretched pretty thin. If you take seriously your commitment to our communities is more than just our kids. We are also an aging population, and we got lots of seniors who are, you know, isolated in their homes and need food and a whole range of things, and people who are chemically dependent and things of that nature. So if you look at our church, man, we probably got 40 ministries in addition to the church. And, you know, it's just it's stretched. The problems have become magnified, manifold in our communities. And so it's going to take more, and it's going to take more sustained engagement. But I do think our churches, through forming coalitions and the like, can be more focused in education, but I don't want to just say, you know, it's just their problem. It's a bigger problem. Yeah, absolutely.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukia Network. We're visiting this evening with Dr. James Johnson, Director of Urban Investment Strategy Center for the Frank Hawkins Keenan Institute of Private Enterprise at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
This is the story of a great people, of hopes and dreams, of challenge and change. It's an American story. The story and struggle that started many centuries ago lives today in the halls and on the walls of the renovated National Civil Rights Museum. Enter the Supreme Court Halls of Justice, sit with Rosa Parks on the Montgomery bus, hear Mahalia Jackson sing at the March on Washington. Plan now to visit the National Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. For more information, log on to civilrightsmuseum.org.
In Memphis, there are 116,000 very important young minds. 20,000 of them attend schools in the bottom 5%.
The Memphis Education Fund partners with committed organizations to give these students access to an equitable education.
Their partners work to operate quality schools, recruit, retain, and develop effective teachers and leaders, ensure community voice, and support the needs of the whole child in Shelby County's priority schools.
R&R on Sports with iConversation.
The Executive Director of the NBA Players Association, Ms. Michelle Roberts.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
He is currently Managing Director and Chairman of USA Basketball, Mr. Jerry Colangelo, with us here on R&R on Sports.
Thank you guys. Nice to be with you.
The one, the only, Detlef Shrimp.
Hey, Howard Larry, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
Ken Griffey Jr., how are you today, sir?
I'm good. How about you guys?
Catch iConversation on R&R on Sports, part of the Kazukia Network.
This is Terry Freeman, president of the National Civil Rights Museum, originally from the go-go capital. D.C., you are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. This evening, we're visiting with Dr. James Johnson, who is the Director of Urban Investment Strategies with the Frank Hawkins Keenan Institute of Private Enterprise with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Doc Ward?
Yep, that's what we are. That's where we are, rather.
Well, I wish we were in Chapel Hill right now.
No, we're interviewing Dr. Johnson. That's where we're
from Chapel Hill.
Right.
Cardell Warren is sitting in with us, guest host from Stanford Children, Memphis City Director.
Right.
And we talked about not only just where you've come from in terms of what you've done in Durham and how you helped lay the groundwork for moving the needle in Durham with youngsters there. But we want to also get into, and we talked a little bit about the church and its role in helping you all develop a sound program. Take us from the church back to the reform piece, back to the education and putting and tying that bow on that thing for us. Would you do that?
So first of all, what I should say is that the church helped us develop a lab school, which is a beta test site for new ideas and innovations for how you educate vulnerable children. Okay, so we have developed an institution that leverages the fact that mediating institutions matter in society and bridging social capital for kids matter. It becomes a laboratory environment to evaluate the efficacy of that kind of model. The other piece of our model is that we believe that schools need to develop a brand. Much like if you all, I'm here in Memphis, and if you all were going to take me out to lunch, hint, hint, after this conversation,
popcorn,
you would take me to a place for a reason.
Sure.
It's got good fish. It's got a good salad or something. Sure. It's known for something.
Yeah.
We think schools ought to be known for something. When you drop your kid off at the school in the morning, I should be able to look you in the eye and tell you what your kid's experience is going to be at the school. If you drop your kid off at Global Scholars Academy, we assure you 4 things: protection, affection, correction, and connections for your kid. And if you look at those 4 things, what undergirds all of that is all evidence-driven. Critical race theory is there, racial and ethnic identity theory is there, oppositional culture theory is there, successful pathways theory is there, emotional regulation theory is there. All of the things that the big theoretical constructs that talk about what's going on in American education and how you fix the problem, we've taken it and put it into a brand for the school. That the school is going to be a place where kids, it's a safe haven for kids to think crazy thoughts. 9 out of 10 of the ideas that come forward may be bona fidely crazy, but one of them may be the next revolution that transforms us. Like venture capitalists.
Much like college.
That's exactly right.
But what you're doing.
That's right. Yeah. We're going to affirm them, who they are, and their identity. That's the affection piece. We're going to correct their little butts when they're wrong, and we're going to build bridging social capital to them. That's not just something that we do as a branding moniker. Everybody from the head of school to the custodian, everybody in between, when you talk to them about GSA, that's what it's like. It's everybody on the bus, in the right seat, headed in the right direction. If you're not going in this direction, you're on the wrong bus.
Cardell, I know you were trying to get a word in edgewise here.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask, because we talked some about the church, and you had the Durham Scholars where you did something different with the after-school program. But what's the piece that you have to add on for the new economy, for where we came from in education, where we need to be in education? Because it seems like whether it's the church or an after-school program, everybody kind of has to look at things different. We aren't training people for factories as much anymore.
That's exactly right.
So how do you address that?
Great question. So we talk about brand promise coming in, and we talk about brand promise going out. What do we argue at Global Scholars Academy that the kids who graduate have in their toolkits? We say they have, yes, the analytical reasoning skills that you need to compete in a new economy where the new normal is certain uncertainty. Analytical reasoning skills, entrepreneurial acumen, because the only constant you face is change, and if one door shuts in your face, you have to do what? Be able to cut another one on your own. Contextual intelligence. You have to be able, in an economy where the new normal is certain uncertainty, is stay on top of your information game, to read the tea leaves, to be anticipatory of the big disruptive trends that are going to occur, the things that could blindside you and knock you off your pathway, and the strategic and propitious opportunities you could take. Leveraging smart technology for competitive advantage, staying on top of your information game so you don't get blindsided by unanticipated change. Impeccable soft skills and the cultural elasticity to move from the streets to the suites without missing a beat. Too many teachers, other people in kids' lives, look at them and say, everything is wrong with you and I'm going to fix it. Everything isn't wrong with these kids, because there's a code of the street out there that says the way I look, the way I talk, the way I dress can be the difference between success and failure. Likewise, the way I look, the way I talk, and the way I dress can be the difference between getting that scholarship and not getting it if you don't understand. It's not one or the other. It's the cultural elasticity to move fluidly from one cultural milieu to the other. And by the way, that is a global set of skills. It's not just for our kids, because you can't go to Bangkok, Thailand and do business the same way you do it in America. You got to have the cultural accoutrements and understand. Those are global skills. And then a lifelong learning mindset, because you're going to be constantly involved in learning. That's the toolkit. That's what we're selling at the end of the educational pipeline. Protection, affection, correction, and connections at the beginning of the pipeline, and you connect those two things.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. We're visiting with Dr. James Johnson, the Director of Urban Investment Strategies, Frank Hawkins Keenan Institute of Private Enterprise with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And my goodness.
Well, I mean, it's a very, 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 and I don't even want to call it ambitious, because you're doing it. It's not what you want to do. It's what you're doing. But how do you get that frame of mind that your children have, your students have, where they're actually thinking about being able to do business in Bangkok, Thailand, into a public system where you have majority of kids that don't even know where Bangkok, Thailand is, don't even know where Thailand is.
Right.
How do you get that integrated into the system? Because from a charter perspective, it's great, and there are a lot of great charters out here. The issue with charters is that it affects a small number of kids in a wider community. And there are a wider number of kids now going to the charter that are going to still be a part and into an environment where they're going to receive a number of negative influences. Right. So our goal, at least I think the goal in the reform aspect, should be to try to make sure everybody has the opportunity.
Right.
You know, even though you can't get everybody across the bridge, make sure everybody at least knows where the bridge is.
That's right.
And has someone that could be in their corner to get them across.
That's exactly.
So how do we take this mindset that you embrace, that your kids embrace, your students embrace, and get that to the broader community?
Okay. So, I mean, fantastic question. Remember that I said this is a laboratory school.
Yes.
It's a beta test site for new ideas and innovations. So we don't fall into the trap of public school versus charter school. We work very closely with the Durham Public School in North Carolina. This is about figuring out a 21st century model with full fidelity to educate our kids. So we share learnings, just like we want to get anything that works in the public school system. We don't need to be reinvent the wheel for these things.
So what you develop is for the public at large.
It's actually for the public at large. And one of the things that I didn't tell you is that we have a K-12 education reform idea lab that we run out of my center at Carolina, and it has the best and brightest scholars in the UNC system and some national scholars connected to us who do research on poor kids. And so everything that we do is evidence-based with hard numbers research behind it for some of the best minds in the country. And so that idea lab is constantly thinking about innovations. How do you peel this onion and make sure we get to the core of a quality education? And then we share those findings with people, and we're out there always gathering intelligence on other things that work. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel. Let's figure out a model with
all out of the business schools. How you do it?
Yeah. How does the School of Education take this?
That was my question.
Do they work collaboratively?
So people in our idea lab it's an interdisciplinary team. We got people from School of Education, from anthropology, psychology, the business school, history, economics. Because we're in a global economy, in a global society. the most creative ideas are not going to come from the silos of education and business and social work over here. Yeah. It's going to occur. Those ideas are going to occur at the intersection or interface of these different, professions and the like. Right. And so we create these knowledge, these interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary knowledge networks that give you these creative and innovative ideas, and then you engage the community through focus groups and other kinds of activities about the things that you're trying to do. I'll give you one classic example that most people look at public education, and a lot of kids are growing up in single-parent households, usually female-headed households, and everybody says non-custodial fathers don't want to be involved in their kids' lives. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Absolutely.
So we started a program at GSA called Dinner and Dialogue with Dads. It's for non-custodial parents, and sometimes we've had to engage the criminal justice system, legal system to get them access to their kids. But they come twice a month. They have dinner with their kids, but we tie an educational program to the dinner. And this thing started out pretty small. We have 200 kids at our school. The last Dinner with Dads program had 90 fathers at this program. And it's not just the non-custodial. Now the whole the fathers and two-parent. It's a movement. And the program was about helping non-custodial fathers, or the fathers more generally, interpret Lexile scores, reading scores. Now, this weekend you're going to have your son, and you're all going to watch football. And
I wish.
His math.
I'm going to probably watch Spider-Man more than watch football.
Well, but sometimes fathers are doing.
Yeah, sure. I get you.
His math is not up to what? How many different exercises can you tie to that football game that enhances? So you're helping people do things. And so those are things that are eminently doable. They're eminently scalable and the like. And so, what we're trying to do is take what we're doing there and build a robust enough model. Our long-term goal is really to develop a franchisable model of public education.
How do you deal with the kids now? Because you got K-8, and then they've got to go on to high school. So the same thing Mark said, of you got to send them out into the world of public schools.
Yep. Well,
how do you deal with it?
So, first of all, you equip them with the skills to navigate certain uncertainty and how to deal in those environments. That's what cultural soft skills, impeccable soft skills is all about. How do you navigate in a world that, is not just totally aligned with who you are and what you want to do? That's called globalization. You have to be able to do that. Sure. So we're big on that. And when you inculcate in kids a global view as part of their education, they see the world differently, and they're able to make choices in their own lives and maybe not succumb to oppositional culture and all of those things, but understand how to navigate those situations without...
And deal with those bonding issues with their peer group.
That's exactly right.
But they have an idea, a loftier thought in terms of where they come from.
That's exactly right.
Their character model's been built.
That's exactly right. So we try to do that. Now, I'm not going to say we're 100% successful, but we're moving toward that direction. And then we bring in and expose them to people who have benefited from, the kinds of things that we talk about every day.
Got a quick question for you, Doc. Going forward, the president-elect has nominated Betsy DeVos to be the new Secretary of Education, and his idea that we've heard so far is that he's a major school choice proponent. Where do you see, now that we're in this, post race to the top money, and then we're in the new ESSER Act or what have you, where do you see public education, the old buildings that we attend now, so most of our students attend now, versus the chart? Do you see that system or that institution being able to survive over the next 4 to maybe 10 years with any great?
No, I think we're in for a major restructuring of public education. Okay. And part of it, I think, we just finished a study where we were looking at the age of all public school buildings in North Carolina. And we got a lot of our kids are attending buildings built prior to 1970. These are sick buildings. I mean, they probably got lead-based paint, a bunch of other kinds of everything. Yeah. We need to disrupt public education and get kids in a set of environments where they are able to have the freedom to discover and to think crazy thoughts without being exposed to all kinds of risks that take years off their lives, stunt their growth, and the like. And so, I think it's too simple whether it's a charter or a voucher and all that. We need to talk about that our kids, the next generation, to propel our nation needs a world-class education. That means reframing it not as a public education problem, but as a competitive issue for our nation in the global marketplace.
Right, and I think that's what we're looking at it from a product base and not necessarily defining ourselves by schools and walls and other things that we look at now, and we misapply thought to now. But does that going forward, though, and I would ask you as a business professor, not necessarily an education professor, do we start by eliminating the Department of Education like Ronald Reagan wanted to do in 1980, or at least giving significant reforming, or maybe reforming it and retooling it to be something else?
I think we have to reform it to focus on what's going to make our nation competitive moving forward. And what do our young people need in their toolkits to compete in an economy and society where emerging market societies have made two decisions. One, to build a physical infrastructure and a technological infrastructure to connect them with the world, and to build a high-quality workforce talent pool to control or rule the world. That's right. We got to understand that we're in a global war for talent, and we have to frame it that way. And we have to look at aligning or realigning our education system. We have to build it to last, to compete, and to ensure that every child has an equal opportunity of access to a world-class education, because we're in a global war.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. We're visiting with Dr. James Johnson of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
I'm stronger than a locomotive, yeah. That old saying is true. But I can't understand sometimes, baby.
This is the story of a great people, of hopes and dreams, of challenge and change. It's an American story. The story and struggle that started many centuries ago lives today in the halls and on the walls of the renovated National Civil Rights Museum. Enter the Supreme Court Halls of Justice, sit with Rosa Parks on the Montgomery bus, hear Mahalia Jackson sing at the March on Washington. Plan now to visit the National Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. For more information, log on to civilrightsmuseum.org.
In Memphis, there are 116,000 very important young minds. 20,000 of them attend schools in the bottom 5%.
The Memphis Education Fund partners with committed organizations to give these students access to an equitable education.
Their partners work to operate quality schools, recruit, retain, and develop effective teachers and leaders, ensure community voice, and support the needs of the whole child in Shelby County's priority schools.
Blues in the Basement live interviews from some of the biggest blues artists in the country.
Say it twice. Bobby Rush.
Bobby Rush.
Wonderful. May God bless you all. All right.
People keep asking me to sing about a good man.
Blues in the Basement. Stay up to date with the biggest blues festivals in the world. Blues in the Basement. Now podcasting and available on iTunes. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and IG. And download the Blues in the Basement app.
I mean, this music just makes for a good time. All I need is a beer and some barbecue.
And some barbecue.
Blues in the Basement. In the Basement. In the Basement. In the Basement.
I am Willie W. Harrington. I am very passionate about educational empowerment and economic empowerment for African American people. And you are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network.
Funky Politics Education Reform Series is presented by the National Civil Rights Museum, sponsored by Memphis Education Fund and Southwest Tennessee Community College. We'd like to thank our media partner, Chalkbeat Tennessee.
This is Terry Freeman,
Jim Strickland,
Dorsey Hobson.
I'm DeAndre Brown.
Elisa Househalter.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics Show.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Y'all better keep listening.
Funky Politics, part of the Katsukian Network.
How we